but that was his last game. So I'm doing a project on it. And
your
figured
project is based on a gator, and so you thought you
Montgomery Gator, yes.
Yeah.
So I figured I'd, hop in the podcast today and
share some facts. I really appreciate that about you.
Yep, we like our Krysta facts. So whether they tie directly to the show or not, always fun. Okay, so let's get into this case a little bit. First things first, couple names, very important because they're the biggest witnesses.
Right.
And so we need to know a little bit about these people. The first one is Charles Irwin Halt. He's the deputy commander in 1980 of RAF Bentwaters, which is the Air Force base that the Americans were using at the time. It's a British base, but the Americans had leased it.
I see.
Now, he is currently retired. He was a colonel in the Air Force. He served in Vietnam, Japan, and Korea before being installed as the deputy commander for RAF Bentwaters. So that's not a lot of information, but there's some things we can glean out of it. For example, he served in 3 different theaters, and in 1980, I doubt he saw much time in the war except maybe Vietnam, but it's possible. But what we do know is in all 3 of those theaters, he did well enough that he was eventually installed as the deputy commander. Now, it is possible to fail upwards in the military, but usually they catch you before you get to the level of deputy commander of an entire base.
Right.
So we know that he executed his command with some competence, or else he never would have been tapped for the job.
Sure.
Now, the other person that we need to talk about and who carries a lot of the burden of proof here is a guy by the name of Jim Peniston. Now, he is former U.S. Air Force security, retired. He entered the Air Force in 1973, served over 20 years active duty in the U.S. Air Force. He was assigned to the Strategic Air Command Elite Guard in Omaha, Nebraska, providing security for general officers, congressmen, foreign heads of states, and presidents.
That's a pretty good, what's the word I'm looking for? Resume.
Yeah.
Resume. Yeah.
It's a good resume. Peniston held key assignments throughout the world, including service in Desert Shield and Desert Storm. He wrote defense, security, counterterrorism, and contingency plans for the USAF and NATO. Additionally, he provided security support for Air Force One and other classified aircraft weapon systems. Peniston held, for the majority of his 20-year career, a U.S. top-secret BI/SCI and a NATO top-secret Cosmic Atomic security clearance. So
there was quite a bit that this guy could and did know.
Right. So, for him, so these are our 2 witnesses. So what can we say about them? We can say that they're professional guys who probably didn't get to where they were by being odd and
making stuff up.
Right. So
sure.
That's our background on our big witnesses. And it seems unlikely to me that either of these men would intentionally get something wrong, nor would they make a simple error. It's not likely.
Not really in their wheelhouse.
So that's why we talk about them. So what did happen? Well, what happened was, for 2 nights, December 26th and 28th, the 27th and 28th.
Of 1980.
Of 1980, in December, security patrols saw strange lights and pursued them. Now, around 3 a.m. on 27 December 1980, security patrol near the east gate of RAF Woodbridge saw lights apparently descending into the nearby Rendlesham forest. Servicemen initially thought it was a downed aircraft. Upon entering the forest to investigate, they saw, according to Halt's memo, what they described as a glowing object, metallic in appearance, with colored lights. As they attempted to approach the object, it appeared to move through the trees, and the animals on the nearby farm went into a frenzy. In fact, there is a tape, the Halt tape. I encourage people to listen to it. I don't know its provenance as far as, I mean, it's on YouTube, but I don't want to use it and then have somebody from this guy's family go, you didn't have permission, you were going to sue.
Right.
So, yeah, if he wants to sue the YouTube people, he can. I just didn't want to be involved in that. But
I hear you.
There is a Halt tape where he is speaking, and he does mention that as he's chasing these lights, the animals on this farm were going crazy, that he could hear them just making a lot of verbal noises, and they seemed to be scared. Now, as they attempted to approach the object, it appeared to move through the trees. As I said, one of the servicemen, Sergeant Jim Peniston, later claimed to have encountered a craft of unknown origin while in the forest. Shortly after 4 a.m., local police were called to the scene, but reported the only lights they could see were from the Orford Ness Lighthouse, some miles away on the coast. After daybreak on the morning of the 27th, servicemen returned to a small clearing near the eastern edge of the forest and found 3 small impressions on the ground in a triangular pattern, as well as burn marks and broken branches on nearby trees.
Sounds like someone's there then.
Right. At 10:30, the local police were called out again, this time to see the impressions, which they thought could have been made by an animal. Charles Halt visited the site in the early hours of 29th December 1980, accompanied by scientists. They measured a radiation level of 0.07 milliroentgens per hour in the triangle depressions. A similar burst was also reported at over half a mile away from the landing site.
Huh.
Now, I have the Halt memo, and it's often used as, it's submitted as proof. And it was just something that Charles Halt wrote to send to his superiors. And basically, it's an explanation of what's going on. So the subject is Unexplained Lights. And he goes on as this. 1. Early in the morning of 27 December 80, approximately 0300, 2 USAF security patrolmen saw unusual lights outside the back gate at RAF Woodbridge. Thinking an aircraft might have crashed or been forced down, they called for permission to go outside the gate to investigate. The on-duty flight chief responded and allowed 3 patrolmen to proceed on foot. The individuals reported seeing a strange glowing object in the forest. The object was described as being metallic in appearance and triangular in shape, approximately 2 to 3 meters across the base and approximately 2 meters high. It illuminated the entire forest with a white light. The object itself had a pulsing red light on top and banks of blue lights underneath. The object was hovering or on legs as the patrolman approached the object. It maneuvered through the trees and disappeared. At this time, the animals on a nearby farm went into a frenzy. The object was briefly sighted approximately an hour later near the back gate. The next day, 3 depressions, 1.5 inches deep and 7 inches in diameter, were found where the object had been sighted on the ground. The following night, 29 December 80, the area was checked for radiation. Beta gamma readings of 0.1 milliroentgens were recorded with peak readings in the 3 depressions and near the center of the triangle formed by the depressions. A nearby tree had moderate 0.05 to 0.07% readings on the side of the tree towards the depressions. Later in the night, a red sun-like light was seen through the trees. It moved about in pulse. At one point, it appeared to throw off glowing particles and then broke into 5 separate white objects and then disappeared. Immediately thereafter, 3 star-like objects were noticed in the sky, 2 objects to the north and 1 to the south, all of which were about 10 degrees off the horizon. The objects moved rapidly in sharp angular movements and displayed red, green, and blue lights. The objects to the north appeared to be elliptical through an 8 to 12 power lens. They then turned to full circles. The objects to the north remained in the sky for an hour or more. The objects to the south were visible for 2 or 3 more hours and beamed down a stream of light from time to time. Numerous individuals, including the undersigned, witnessed the activities in paragraphs 2 and 3. And it's signed by Charles I. Halt. So that's the Halt memo. And a lot of is made from that. So, that's what happened. Now, the strange lights in the sky were also confirmed by the aid of 2 radars. Colonel Halt said, and this is on the tape, "I have confirmation that Bentwaters radar operators saw the object go across their screens at 60 miles per scope in 2 or 3 seconds."
Wow.
So a scope covering 60 miles, things cross it in 3 seconds. I don't know what that speed is, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
Thousands of miles an hour is the next thing he said. He came back across the scope again, stopped near the water tower. They watched it and observed it go into the forest where they were. According to Halt's memo, 3 star-like lights appeared in the sky, 2 to the north and 1 to the south. So that's what happened. That's the basics.
That's the basics. That's it.
Yeah. Now, this is called Britain's Roswell, but it's called Britain's Roswell because everything that has been done to debunk it. And we'll get into that, but first, let's take a moment for a word from our sponsors.
Not COVID.
No, not COVID. But, you could say that we are sponsored by the letter C. We have COVID and commercials. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, you could say that. I don't know if you want to, but you
us and Sesame Street. I'm just saying.
could. Well, in either case, I feel sponsored.
So, let's talk about the skeptics for a minute. The skeptics have done everything they can to tear this down.
Don't skeptics usually do that? I mean, that's kind of a skeptic's thing. I'd like to meet an unskeptic skeptic, but then they wouldn't be a skeptic any longer.
Well, okay. Let's ignore everything and focus on what we do, what they say. One theory is that scientists recorded a fireball that was in the sky. Now, apparently, occasionally, fireballs happen in the air, and so it is recorded that one happened that evening, and everybody goes, well, that's it. But a fireball doesn't move across a scope at thousands of miles an hour. And we have Halt's testimony that that's exactly what it did. And again, we have verification that Halt was not a crazy accustomed to making these sorts of reports, or he wouldn't have been the deputy base commander.
Exactly.
Another thing they like to say was, well, it was just the lighthouse. The cops, that's the only light they saw was the lighthouse. So it's got to be the lighthouse. These are Air Force guys. These are trained observers. And you're telling me they can't suss out a lighthouse
light from An Unexplained Light? Yeah. Yeah.
And then